Hello and welcome to Week 17 of the National Football League. Hope you all had a great holiday. Greg Cosell over there from NFL Films and ESPN's NFL Matchup. Hope you had a great holiday too. Of course, with Greg, his holiday is going to NFL Films at 5 in the morning and watching tape for 16 hours.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to my holiday and what is it, May or June?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're like teachers. We get the summer off and
yeah,
then
yeah. That's what I'm looking forward to my holiday.
yeah. So anyway, Doug Farrar from Touchdown Wire and the USA Today Sports Media Group, the aforementioned Greg Cosell from NFL Films and ESPN's NFL Matchup. You can tell I'm tired because I pointed the wrong way. Greg's over there. Hi, Greg. It's a long season, man. So week 17, here we are. We got some interesting games. Thursday, Browns Jets, and matchup wise, the Browns are probably going to the playoffs. Jets are what they are. But I wanted to discuss Flacco against the Jets defense because since Joe Flacco got off the couch and became the Browns starting quarterback in week 13, Greg, he leads the league in passing attempts, 175. He's second in completions behind Jake Browning, go Ohio, with 104. He leads the NFL in passing yards with 1,321. And some of those throws he made against the Texans last week to Amari Cooper were utterly ridiculous. And Amari Cooper had 11 catches for a single game franchise record, 265 yards, 2 touchdowns in the Browns' 36-22 win over Houston. Cooper is the fourth player in NFL history with 3 career games with at least 200 receiving yards and 2 touchdown receptions, joining Pro Football Hall of Famer Don Sutton, Charlie Hennigan, go AFL, and Tyreek Hill. So back to Flacco, and I thought the design of 2 of his plays were interesting, yet similar and interesting. He had a stutter go boundary throw to Cooper, 2 of them, the 75-yard touchdown early in the second quarter, and the 21-yarder with 1:17 left in the third quarter. Both times, Texans were in cover 3. Both times, it was just have Cooper beat the corner because the deep safety has to play to the passing strength. Cooper was the backside ISO on both plays, I believe. And on the 21-yard play, this is what I want to get to. The Browns motioned to 4 strong. We've talked a lot about how 4 strong opens things up in the passing game, but this was an example to me where it opened everything up, but for the backside ISO guy. Let's say, we're going to force the defense to go all this way, and it was pretty cool.
Well, I actually thought, believe it or not, I thought his best throw of the day was the Njoku 21-yard touchdown.
Yep.
I thought that was an unbelievable throw.
We'll put that one up too because I agree.
Yeah. Just to talk about Flacco generally as opposed to specific plays, what I think he's done is he's expanded the Browns' passing game, not only vertically, but in many ways, Doug, horizontally. And I'll tell you why. Because one thing you don't see very often in the NFL, there's only a few quarterbacks that can do this. You don't see quarterbacks throw the ball to the number 1 receiver in a plus split outside the numbers to the wide side of the field, because those are hard throws. When you're on the far hash and you're asking a quarterback to throw all the way across the field to a number 1 split receiver outside the numbers, you don't see, Josh Allen can make that throw. Certainly there are quarterbacks that are capable of that. Allen, Stafford, Mahomes can make that throw. But a lot of quarterbacks, that's not really part of the pass game for a team because it's a hard throw.
It's not a comfortable throw because you're either going this way or,
Well, you're throwing it across the entire field.
Right.
So, it's a long throw. People don't realize, even though if it doesn't seem like it's a long throw in terms of just pure yardage, you're throwing it almost, if the field is 53 1/3 wide, you're throwing it just before you even count the yardage forward, you're probably throwing that 30 yards plus in the air. And then you have to add the yards forward, and those are not trajectory throws. Those are more firm touch, velocity throws. So not every quarterback can do that. Flacco can do that.
And if you're doing it there, like right at the line of scrimmage, you've got a guy pressed up on you. You don't have any advantage. You've run past someone. That's out the window.
Right. So, he's expanded the passing game that way, so it becomes a different and more difficult passing game to defend. The other thing which may surprise people is he doesn't limit their deployment of play-action boot. He's kind of a little bit better athlete than people think, and he can get outside the pocket by design, which he did, obviously, on the Cooper 75-yard touchdown, which was designed boot left. And Cooper, as you said, ran the stutter go versus a backup corner, Ross. And with post safety Petrie, he jumped the crosser by Njoku. There was no deep help. And by the way, it was evident that Petrie was not supposed to do that. because that was the last snap he played other than 2 snaps in dime. So
Oh,
obviously Petrie was not supposed to do that. But anyway, the point is that he just really gives you so much more in your pass game.
yep.
But getting back to that throw, that 21-yarder, to me, that says a lot about NFL quarterbacking. And for this reason, because there are certain throws that as a quarterback, you have to make, like on that play, they were in a 3-by-1 set. Cooper was the boundary X. He was the single receiver to the short side of the field. And the Texans actually played 2-man to Cooper because they had the safety to his side basically play over the top of him, and the corner play kind of 2-man man technique. And then they played quarters to the 3 receiver side to trips.
Okay.
So right at the snap, he knew that the middle of the field was open. And then he knew that he had Njoku on kind of a stick nod seam route versus a linebacker. So all he had to make sure of was that the quarter's safety to the trip side could not overlap the throw.
Right.
But I mean, the point I'm making is when he sees his tight end on a linebacker, it's the NFL. He's making that throw. He's been
Yep.
around long enough to know, when you get a tight end on a linebacker, particularly a tight end who can run, that's the throw. That's just the way it is in the NFL. Your tight end's got to win. But he made a great, great throw.
Yeah, it was, and he couldn't let go all the way through because he had pressure in his face.
He did have
But
pressure. He absolutely did.
and he had to cut his motion short, and he just zinged it in there. And there was 4 or 5 balls to mostly to Cooper where he could have walked down and handed it to the guy. It wouldn't have been any less accurate than
Yeah, no,
throwing.
he look, he'll occasionally, because he's such an aggressive thrower, he'll throw a pick. There's no question. And he's done that at times throughout his career, although he's never truly been the way people think of quarterbacks that just throw a lot of picks.
No,
He's never thrown as many as people might think, but he is an aggressive thrower. He understands the game at a high level. He knows it's the NFL that, hey, if it's one-on-one, you throw it. It's up to your receiver to win. I mean,
it's
that's the way it goes in the NFL. If it's one-on-one, you throw it. I mean, if you have Cooper one-on-one, if he's the boundary X, which he normally is for them, and it's
exactly.
one-on-one, you know what? It's up to Cooper to win. That's where you're throwing the
Yep.
ball.
I was going to say the 2 backside ISO balls, the go balls that I was talking about, both of them. It's like, okay, safety's going this way because that's the way the play is designed. You're going 3 or 4 strong to that side. Petrie has to come down. He has to go over, whether it's a motion or whatever. So it's one-on-one. Go for it. I trust you. And
No, that's the NFL.
that's
That's
football.
the way it works.
But it's also how a guy like Flacco, who has seen every possible elephant, can make the most of a Stefanski designed offense that really brings a lot to the quarterback. And some quarterbacks, it's too much. With Flacco, he's like, oh, yeah, I did this in 2016. I did this in 2012, blah, blah, blah. And he's
Yeah,
just on the
and
side.
then
Oh,
you
my
mentioned
God.
the 21-yarder. Is that the one you're talking about where they were in 13 personnel?
Uh,
Because
yes.
there was a 21-yarder. It was a back shoulder versus Nelson. Is that the play you're speaking of?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Yeah. See, they
Yeah.
they knew that they'd get single high safety coverage at it because they were in 13 personnel, which means 3
Right.
tight ends, 1 back and 3 tight ends. So they knew that they would get single high, probably cover 3 because the Texans are not a high percentage man coverage defense. So
No.
they knew they'd get Cooper one-on-one versus
Yeah.
Nelson. They knew that. That was anticipated based on their personnel and their formation. So that's where he was throwing the ball. He was throwing it to Cooper. It's Cooper versus Nelson one-on-one, and he threw it back shoulder. And you'll take that matchup every day of the week.
Absolutely. So the Texans do not do well with explosive plays with play action, so the Browns spammed them with that. Now the Jets, for all their defensive excellence, are also not great on deep balls with play action. They've allowed 4 deep completions on 10 attempts of 20 or more air yards for 160 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and an opponent pass rating of 127.1, 6th worst in the league. So if we think, oh, they're going to turn Flacco into a pumpkin, maybe not so fast.
Well, the only difference here is the D line because it's funny because Flacco, they're playing Garon Christian at left tackle and James Hudson at right tackle, and both those guys struggle in one-on-one pass protection. But Flacco has played a long time; he understands all that. He knows how to kind of work through all that. The play calling helps as well. Play action is a significant part of what they do. But in this game, putting aside the secondary, the Jets do have an advantage up front. So is it possible that there can be some negative plays. There can be in this game for sure. But, Flacco clearly has an understanding of that. He'll have an understanding of it going in. And, they'll, whether they chip, whatever they do to help, particularly Hudson at right tackle, who has clearly struggled at times. So that's something you have to deal with. But you know what? He's a professional quarterback. They'll deal with it. I'm not sitting here saying they're going to win the game. Who knows? That's why they play him. But it's something that they'll know. Flacco will know. And I remember a very quick story. Ron Jaworski always told me that Stan Walters was his left tackle, and he would
Mhm.
always tell me that on Saturday night, Coach Vermeil would get Jaws one-on-one and say, "Hey, you know what we have in our game plan, and there are going to be some plays where we're asking Stan to block a really good pass rusher one-on-one, and you have to be aware that he may not hold up all the time. So you just have to be aware when we call those plays that could happen." So that's Joe will be aware of that, which doesn't mean, like I said, you never know, but it's not as if that'll be a surprise.
No, no. I got to watch tape with Sauce Gardner last week. I don't know if I told you that. It was an
No.
interesting study of how you can really clamp things down without having sacks and interceptions are two most overbaked defensive stats anyway. Sauce didn't have an interception when I watched tape with him, still
Right.
playing. So, yeah, interesting matchup. So, very interesting matchup. Saturday, Lions at Cowboys.
Yep.
Greg, coming into their Week 15 game against the Dolphins, the Cowboys have played man coverage 41% of the time, the highest rate in the NFL. Against the Dolphins, they
They didn't
dropped that
play it.
to 31.6, which ranked 15th. Now, you're playing zone against the Dolphins. They allowed 15 completions and 20 attempts for 223 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, passer rating of 111. When they were in man, the passer rating was 72.0. The 2 is 1 touchdown pass with against goal line, so it's different. I get why you would want to zone things up against the Dolphins, but this isn't a defense that's really built to do that. And now to flip that script, let's talk about Jared Goff against man coverage this season.
Yeah, but it's funny you say that. They're not built to do that, but they're also not built to having Gilmore late in his career who can't run and Bland who can't run, getting beat over the top by Tyreek Hill and Waddle. So
Well, I would argue that, Greg, they are built to do that because that's what happened.
well, that's what happened. Yeah, I mean, on the second play of the game, should have been an 80 or 90-yard touchdown to Hill,
Yeah,
and then on the same drive, he threw a 50-yarder to Waddle, who ran by Gilmore as if he
yeah.
wasn't there. So
Yeah, I'd say they're built to do exactly that, Greg, because that's what
right.
happened.
So Quinn understood that he couldn't
Sure.
play man in this game, no matter what their MO has been for the last
Right.
number of years. It just was not the team to do that against, and they played a ton of dime.
Yes.
So they had a specific game plan because the last thing any coordinator wants to have happen, as you well know, are explosive pass plays.
Yep.
So therefore and by the way, I don't think they play poorly against that offense. Now the ball came out quick. Watching the tape though was fascinating
I
because
haven't watched the Dolphins offense. I'm going to do that later today.
oh well, Parson, the ball gets out quick, as you know. Okay,
Mhm.
so Tua doesn't get sacked a lot, but Parsons was just dominating, but he just couldn't get sacks because the ball was out so quick. But he was just eating up whatever offensive lineman he was going up against. And then, of
Mhm.
course, they had a split sack late on a third down play. But no, their defense did not play poorly. The Dolphins scored one offensive touchdown.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't, 70 points like they can do.
No.
Uh,
So I mean
so
their defense actually I thought played well. I thought it was the right approach, the right plan, and they'll go back, I would imagine, to playing more man coverage against Detroit.
Well, let's get into that. Let's talk about Jared Goff against man coverage this season. 72 of 125 for 841, 549 air yards, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a passer rating of 99.5. He has 10 interceptions this season, Greg. All 10 have come against zone coverage. Now, that includes the 5 he's thrown against the Bears. One of those was a deep attempt where the Lions were down and the Bears were playing Hail Mary defense. And another, you remember this place, we talked about it, where Sam Laporta bumped into Jaquan Brisker
Yeah.
and Tyreek Stevenson was just there for the ball. But I'm watching all his zone, all those picks. It's defenders sitting and waiting to jump Goff's throws in zone. When he's facing zone, it seems to me and this is not, he's not terrible against zone, but there's a little extra tick in his head. He's not as quick to throw. He's not maybe as decisive, and he seems to get the wrong answers a little bit more often against zone. So I wonder if that
Well,
will
first of
factor.
all, I would say this, and I understand what the stats say,
Mhm.
but how many passes has he thrown against zone? In other words, I don't think that's a large enough sample to say, well, he struggles against zone. I guarantee, because I've watched the Lions, pretty much every week, and there
Right.
are a ton of great throws against zone
Oh, I'm not
coverage.
saying there aren't. I'm saying he's thrown
Yeah,
10 interceptions. They've all been against zone. I mean, that's
right.
what. Yeah.
So
I'm.
again, I can't remember all 10 in terms of what they
Yeah.
look like, what they look like. But I guess what I'm saying is I wouldn't automatically say that if you play zone, like I don't think Dan Quinn is going to go into this game saying, you know what, we're going to play a lot of zone because he's thrown 10 interceptions.
Oh no.
I don't think that's going to be the thought process.
No, you have to cast a wider net. I'm just saying, given their tendencies, would they, try and mix it up a little bit to at least try and throw
And I
Goff
will
off?
say this, I think quarterbacks that for the most part, it's not 100% by any means, but I would say Goff is one of the best window anticipation throwers in the league.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, a guy like Purdy is, Stroud was proving to be that kind of guy. Tua is obviously that guy. So I would say that when you're a big time window anticipation thrower, every once in a while you get one wrong. Okay. And,
Mhm.
and I think that leads to balls that look like, oh my God, where are you throwing that one? You know, and, you
It's
know,
not even. I mean, what I saw this morning when I looked at it, it wasn't even that. It was more like you're kind of waiting behind the receiver to jump. It wasn't. Oh my God, what the hell is he
here's
doing?
what I'd love to know, which
It's more like little windows.
and I don't know if you remember this because you may not have been looking for this specific thing, but I would love to know how many of those 10 came when he had to wait a little bit in the pocket, as opposed to if he could throw them rhythmically. And I
I
don't
can
know the answer to that because I didn't look at all 10 this morning like you did.
keep talking for 30 seconds. I'll get you the exact numbers. Uh,
Well, I mean, I don't know what number tells you that.
right,
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you'd have to. I would have to see the
right.
plays to
Yeah,
evaluate it myself. But
I'm
all I'm
looking.
saying is,
Yeah,
you know, I think that if he had to wait in the pocket for whatever reason, and it wasn't thrown with a normal sense, a refined sense, and subtle sense of timing and rhythm, then I could understand it. I think when
that
he
was
can,
my impression.
okay, because I think when he can hit his back foot and deliver, my guess is he's very good against zone.
He will also whoop your ass against zone or man on inbreakers. He might be the best
Without
inbreaker.
question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's great within breakers. Purdy's great within
Yep.
breakers. Yeah.
Any of those middle window, like intermediate
Yep.
anticipation throws. Yeah, he's got 7 of his picks are 2.5 seconds or more after the snap, which I would say that's true of most quarterbacks because at that point you're messing around and trying to find out. But
Well, after 2.5 seconds, by the way, there's no drop that goes longer than that because the way it normally works is even though it's in the gun, the equivalent of 3-step timing is 1.5 seconds. The
yep,
equivalent of 5-step timing is 2.1, and the equivalent of 7-step timing is 2.5. So anything after that, Doug, means that the quarterback is not throwing within the timing of the play design. So if it's after 2.5, then he's waiting in the pocket.
like Brock Purdy's second interception to Kyle Hamilton, where he was running around for 9 seconds. That was weird. We'll talk about that in a minute. So Dallas's run defense, because the concept of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery is not really favorable for Dallas's side. Over the last 3 weeks against the Eagles, Bills, and Dolphins, 3 teams that run the ball well and can keep up with you score for score so they can keep running the ball. Dallas has allowed 463 rushing yards. Only the Seahawks are worse with 513. Only the Jaguars have faced more rushing attempts, 106, than the Cowboys, 98. They're allowing 4.7 yards per attempt, a 30.6% third down conversion rate, one of the worst in the NFL, and a 52 positive play rate, which is, your
Who have they played the last 3 weeks? The Dolphins, Eagles, and who's the third?
Bills, where they just unleash James Cook all over
Yeah,
them.
the Bills game was, again, I don't want to say it's an aberration because we
No,
don't know that, but that game skews the stats quite a bit. I mean,
yeah,
that was in many ways an unexpected game, and maybe
yeah.
it does show a weakness in the Cowboys defense. But let's put it this way: I doubt they went into that game defensively with the thought process that we're going to have to really buck up and defend the run. I mean, and again, I'm not saying that means it's okay what happened, but I guarantee that was not the major conversation going into that
No,
game.
And full marks to Joe Brady for, winning at chess there.
And by the way, my guess is they didn't go into that game expecting Josh Allen to throw 15 balls. They
No,
stayed with the way the game played out, and they
sure.
got the lead, and there was no reason to change. Now, let's say that the Cowboys were scoring some points. You and I both know that Cook would not have gotten all those carries, and Allen would not
Oh,
have had 15 attempts. But the
of
way the
course.
game continued to play out, there was no reason to change anything.
Right. So only the Seahawks have been worse with positive player. This coincides with the absence of Jonathan Hankins, a defensive tackle who suffered a high ankle sprain in week 14 against the Eagles. It has not been the same defense without Hankins, and he has not been a participant in practice this week. So Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Gibbs had 3 explosive runs against the Vikings' outstanding defense, and I know you've seen the 18-yard run with 8:28 left in the third quarter. There's 11 personnel on 4th and 1. Pretty interesting. Sam Laporta motions across to chip Daniil Hunter. The offensive line blasted a big hole up the middle for Gibbs, who responded by putting a move on cornerback at Caleb Evans that put Evans in the shadow realm.
Yeah. I mean that's gone viral, as it were. It's a shame he didn't score on that play.
One of the nastiest jump cuts you'll ever see. So the Lions' run game has the schemes, the talent, and the consistency. Ben Johnson has one of the most multiple run games in the NFL with his 2 different backs. So they can make things very tough for the Cowboys, and they can match the Cowboys touchdown for touchdown to keep that going. They're not going to have, you don't know, but most likely they won't have to stop because they're down 30 in the second half.
Yeah, we don't know the answer to that. Some might say that they gave up over 400 yards to Nick Mullins, so we'll see how the game plays out. Although, I think defensively, I really like the last 2 games watching this kid Melifanu, who I did coming out of Syracuse, who was a corner in college, and he's playing safety, and he's been an impact player for them the last 2 weeks. But they struggle at corner, and that to me is the biggest concern in their defense right now. And we'll see how it plays out. But they struggle at corner. But other than that, I think their defense actually is pretty good. I mean, Branch is a really good player. Melifanu has shown the last 2 weeks. I don't know. Is Gardner Johnson potentially playing this week?
I think it could be.
Yeah.
That.
So, I mean, they have a lot of versatility on the back end, but none of those guys are going to play outside corner.
No. Branch was my 14th ranked player in this class. I have no idea why he went in the second round, but whatever.
You mean why he was drafted where he was?
Yeah.
You know why he was drafted where he was. It doesn't make it right. It's because he ran a 4.58 at the combine.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I know. I mean, again, I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying that's the way a lot of, he was one of my favorite players to watch on tape last year. And, to me, he was a first round pick. And I've been wrong, just like, everybody's wrong when it comes to the draft. Yeah. Okay. That's just the nature of the draft, because no matter how many metrics and stats you have, it's still human beings evaluating human beings. Yep. But I thought that Branch was a top 20 player in the draft without question, but that was me. I'm sure I'm not the only one who felt that way, but so I'm not surprised by how he's playing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Nick Mullins, I think, had 4 interceptions. Brock Purdy had 4 interceptions, and both of those guys, I mean, they got yards, they got big plays, but they also threw 4 interceptions, and we'll be talking about Purdy.
Well, Purdy's interceptions were different, but we can discuss that if you want.
Yeah, we can get into that. So Rams, Giants, and it's the Giants, but I'm using this as an excuse, as I told you yesterday on the phone. I just want to talk about Matthew Stafford. So Matthew Stafford, weeks 1 through 9, 59%.
You got a little bromance brewing here, my man? A little bromance?
I got a bromance with the whole offense. We can talk about the run game later.
Well, the offense is it's I don't want to say it's simple, because of course it's not, but I mean, watching tape, you see about 4 things that you're going to get in the pass game. You're going to get reduced splits. You're going to get shifts and motions. You're going to see stacks, and you're going to see bunches. You're going to see that no matter who they play against, just done differently depending on the opponent. But that's what they are.
Yeah. Well, I have a bromance on Puka Nacua because he looks just like Eddie Van Halen, which is, right.
He kind of does.
He totally does. So
better that than Valerie Bertinelli.
Well,
I mean, as far as for him, not maybe not for you and I, but for him.
I'm not going to even go there.
You're not going to go there, I know.
I don't know what to do with that. Yeah. So Matthew Stafford, weeks 1 through 9, 59.7% completion rate, 7.1 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a passer rating of 82.0. Matthew Stafford since week 10, 65.1 completion rate, 7.6 yards per attempt, 15 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 107.7. And since week 10, Stafford has 22 attempts and 11 completions of 20 or more air yards. So he's not padding his stats with underneath stuff. Not that he would, because
Well,
he's Matt.
their pass game, conceptually is not built on 5 yard passes.
No, nor would
No.
it be, because you have that guy. If you go out and get, you pay what you got to get him, you're going to do
But
it.
I think conceptually, no matter who the quarterback is for that team, even when Goff was there, I mean, it's not built on 5 yard throws. That's not the way McVay structures his pass game, because all those things that we spoke about, reduce splits, motions and shifts, stacks, bunches, they all create free access. So receivers can get into their routes cleanly and quickly, and they can get down the field. And when I say down the field, I don't mean vertical, 60-yard bombs, although Stafford's certainly capable of those throws. But the point is they can get down the field at the intermediate level without any impediment, without any disruption, and they can attack defenses at the intermediate/intermediate deeper levels. And it's a thing of beauty. To me, I have my most fun, and again, this is just, everybody's different. I have my most fun watching the Lions pass game and the Rams pass game. I think that they're just kind of a joy to watch and how they're structured.
Yep. And the run game, Kyron Williams, and they're running more gap. It's more, it's more varied than the usual zone.
Well,
stuff.
they work outside a little more, and they've run a little more duo inside, so they do a few more things than we're used to seeing with McVay. But it's not revolutionary. They just do it. They just do a few different things, because I think they play to the back. He's not explosive, but he's shifty in confined space, and he's got a bit of natural power for a guy that's short but not small.
Mm-hmm. And the reduced splits, I think this is important because
and their wide receivers block, by the way.
Yes, well, them and the Niners, you better block, or they'll throw you out the plane. The reduced split thing, and I'm talking you. You talk to coaches, I talk to coaches, analysts, whatever. That is for a lot of teams. They're trying to fabricate in the NFL the wider hash marks from college, and I think that's an important sort of schematic.
What do you mean? I don't know what that means.
I've talked to a couple of people who say that you're trying to replicate with the reduced splits. You have more free access, as you said, to either side. So you're trying to
without question,
because obviously, and we've talked about this a lot, the narrower hash marks in the NFL. Well, how can you sort of fabricate
so in other words, you're saying, how can you create more space for your receivers?
Yeah, you're
That's what you're
fabricating
basically saying.
space to either side with the space you have.
Normally, are there teams that could do this? Sure, but almost always with reduced splits, cut splits, whatever term people want to use, normally corners will play with a little more width and depth. Normally, you don't get press versus cut splits. Like I said, can it be done? It can be. But normally you don't, because with those cut splits, like you said, there's really a two-way go, and there's too much space outside. So teams don't have their corners normally press. So they end up playing off the ball with a little more width and a little more depth, and that creates the free access that you're looking for. So the timing of the routes are not disrupted.
Good. Dolphins at Ravens. I understand that Purdy's 4 interceptions were different, and I know that they moved the ball. And look, I don't care if you're the 85 Bears, you're going to give up explosive plays to this 49er. They're too good. You're not going to just shut them down. That's not going to happen. I thought that the interception that Brandon Stevens deflected to Marlon Humphrey, I mean, we can say, it was a tip, or he got thrown off the spot. So maybe that's just luck, and luck tends to, navigate either way. They ran a double corner blitz to set that up on that play. And then,
that play was a called run, and
right.
It was a called run, and Purdy obviously saw out of the corner of his eye the blitz coming from the side of the called run, because the other side, as far as what he did, was not relevant, even though it was Humphrey coming from the other side. And Stevens made a great play. Purdy made the right decision. Stevens made a great play. And, tip balls, it was a great play. But those plays are more unfortunate than, oh, my God, they just killed him. The one really bad play by Purdy of his 4 picks was the first one
Sure.
when, that's a ball he should never have thrown. He knew that, I'm sure, as soon as he threw it.
The
And
first Hamilton interception, just
the
to,
first Hamilton interception, that was on Purdy 1,000%.
yep.
You
And
know,
he said that. Yeah.
yeah, and he knows he shouldn't have thrown that ball. The third one where he ran around. I mean, it's easy after the fact to say that's reckless, but we've also seen him make plays this year where he has run around. So you can say what you want about that. And the last one, he got hit. The last
Yeah.
one, his arm got hit. So, three were sort of unfortunate. The first was a bad play by Purdy, but they were moving the ball in that game,
No,
particularly in
they
the
were.
first half.
They were.
I mean, I've heard a lot of people say this week that, they got bullied. Well, the game got out of hand clearly in
Yeah,
the
I wouldn't go
second
that.
half. They
No.
went 3-and-out on their first series of the third quarter. Obviously, they did not want to do that, but they did. And then on the first play of the third quarter for the Ravens, Lamar made a Lamar play where he ran out of the pocket and he hit Edwards, where Greenlaw abandoned his coverage responsibility, because that's what happens when Lamar gets out of the pocket. And
Yeah.
But in the first half, the Ravens offense wasn't anything special in the first half. Lamar made a bunch of really good plays in the second half that were Lamar plays, because
Mhm.
that first drive ended with the Aguilar touchdown, which was another Lamar play where he left the pocket to his left.
I liked the design of Purdy's interception to Patrick Queen with 12:07 left in the third, the defensive design, third quarter. Ravens showed an 8-man box pre-snap, then dropping 7 into quarters. McCaffrey's hot motion forced Brandon Stevens to widen, took away the heavy box look to a point, but the Ravens still had to get to Purdy with 4 rushers against 5 blockers. And defensive lineman Travis Jones, that's 6'4", 338
Yeah, he
pound,
beat McKivitz, who got beat a lot in this game.
on the edge. Love
Yeah,
that. So,
yeah.
and so he got to Purdy to upset the throw. And yes, it was bad luck, but as the English poet John Milton said in the 17th century, luck is the residue of design. And Greg, I think John Milton would have been a Ravens fan, and that's just all I'm going to say about that.
I mean, and again, this was a game to me where Purdy, and it happens to every quarterback. I remember Jaws telling me this, that it would happen twice a year to him, and it happens that way with most quarterbacks. This was one of the few games, maybe the only game I've seen, where Purdy was clearly uncomfortable in the pocket. As the game progressed, he played a little fast physically.
Mhm.
I thought the Queen interception was a good example where he did not see and process as quickly and precisely as he normally does, because he had Ayuk open in the underneath zone void, but he didn't turn it loose. He looked to the other side to McCaffrey on the angle route, and then the pressure got there. But if he had thrown the ball within the timing to Ayuk wide open, we wouldn't be discussing this play. So,
Right.
but Purdy was just one of those games.
Well, ifs and buts or candy and nuts. So one play I wanted to the Zay Flowers touchdown with 11:52 left to third. This was fun. The Ravens had an unbalanced formation to the right with tight end Isaiah Likely lined up in the wing, outside right tackle Morgan Moses. Left tackle Ronnie Stanley was lined up outside Likely. Then Flowers in the slot and Aguilar outside. The Niners had everyone stacked to that side, and they must have been thinking that something was going to happen underneath, because with running back Gus Edwards headed to the right flat, it was 5 strong. Flowers went right by linebackers Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, who were in the same place at the same time. You don't see that very often. So I think Todd Monken was in his bag on that
My
one.
guess is they weren't thinking anything, because they rushed up to the line of scrimmage and snapped the ball immediately, and you can see that the Niners are trying to figure everything out. So that was the whole point of the play, is they rushed up and then did something that is not normal, and the Niners just never got set. They weren't given time to react to what you just said. So who knows what would have happened if Lamar went up to the line and they ran the exact same play, but Lamar stood there for 10 seconds and the Niners, were able to react. But they were caught because they ran up to the line and snapped the ball immediately.
Yep.
That was the play where Likely, I believe, was inside of Stanley.
Yes, it was Moses, Likely, Stanley, Flowers, Aguilar.
Yeah, because Likely was inside of Stanley. Yep.
And obviously no tackle on the left side.
And Stanley was on the right, but he was actually almost flexed like a tight end, because Likely was off the ball inside of Stanley.
Yeah, we'll put that play up because it was really
good. Yeah.
Just fun. So playing the Dolphins, Ravens defense against motion, they've allowed the 4th lowest passer rating against throws with motion, 82.8, behind only the Browns, Niners, and Steelers. And they're tied with the Vikings and the Texans for the lowest yards per carry against runs with motion, which is also important. Just what you've seen from, the discipline, spacing, whatever makes the Ravens sort of be able to handle motion in ways that some defenses might not be able to.
Yeah, I'm curious how Hamilton will be deployed in this game
He
because
was
he's
deployed everywhere against the Fort. Oh my God, he had one
yeah. Well,
snap.
that's the way they use him. So I don't really have a sense of how they see him in this game. That because again, I'm not McDonald, and so I don't know. But
Yeah, it's McDaniel against McDonald. We're going to get that confused all week. So
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, because obviously Hamilton plays slot when they play what essentially would be big nickel because he's technically a safety. And
right,
Stone's in the game with Williams, but they also use him on the back end as a true safety. So I don't know how they see it in this game. When you
yeah.
play the Dolphins, it's a little different because of the speed and the motion. So they're different than other teams. Like I know what you said about the motion, but the Dolphins present a different animal. So
Oh sure.
I don't know what they're going to do. This is going to be a fascinating study after the game.
Yeah, you don't have that CFL motion with Hill and Waddle with other teams, so I can't
Well,
compare them.
Waddle's got a high ankle sprain, and
Right.
high ankle sprains normally don't go away in a week, but we'll see.
Yeah. So it's they had the same thing they faced in week 13. There isn't really
No,
a
there's
link.
not a correlation. Now with
No.
the Dolphins, they're different.
Yep. So Jalen
That Hill
Ramsey,
guy's fast.
I've heard that. Yes.
Yeah.
So Jalen Ramsey, since Ramsey became a starter for the Dolphins in week 8, the Dolphins have seen major defensive improvements in completion rate, average depth of target, yards per attempt, touchdown rate, and interception rate. Before Ramsey this season, they allowed a touchdown rate of 4.0%, and they had an interception rate of 1.2%. Since Ramsey, their touchdown rate and their interception rate is the same, 3.7. Cowboys targeted Ramsey 3 times, allowing a total of 12 yards. So when you watch Miami's defense, Greg, how does Ramsey not only play at his own ridiculous clip in this particular defense, but how does he present? You hear this about defensive players, right? How does his presence open possibilities up for other defenders?
I don't know if I'd word it that way because for the most part, he's just a zone corner on a team that plays a lot of zone. He's
Right.
just as
And he
good a
doesn't
zone
travel
corner.
like
He's just as good a zone corner as there is in the league.
yeah,
Um, you know, I've talked about this before. His understanding of receiver splits, of route concepts that come from receiver splits, of how to manage the conflict that zone corners are in based on route combinations. I'm not sure there's a better zone corner in the league because, he's not used as a true matchup corner.
no,
Maybe every once in a while he'll play press man, but, that's not the way he's deployed for the most part. But he's just so good at playing zone that he takes away a lot of the voids that you anticipate, when you call plays to attack and beat zone because he has such a great understanding of routes. And like I said, of managing the conflict because all zone defenders can be put in conflict by the nature of routes. And he's just a master at that. I mean, he's such an intuitively smart player that, he's so good. So, I don't think it's a matter of, him helping other guys in that sense. I just
okay.
think he shuts down a lot of the route concepts that you just assume. Okay, let's call this because we anticipate getting quarters, or let's call this because we're going to cover 3. And the things you assume will work don't always work.
So that would usually be more of a, if you're more of a traveler, more of a matchup corner that
He's
might.
not really used that way.
Right. I'm saying it would be maybe more that case for guys who do that, opening things up.
Right.
For
Right.
right.
I mean,
So,
again, could he be in a given game? That's the thing. You never know because we don't know how they see a given game. But that's normally not what Vic Fangio does.
right. And he's played outside corner. He's played rat. He's played,
Star,
star.
which is the
All
name for
kinds.
slot very
Played,
often. Yeah.
yeah, he played a crap load of star at Florida State. So
I
he's
mean,
done all.
he can do pretty much anything. He's just an incredibly smart, intuitive, instinctive player.
So would you say, Greg, that he's an expert in receiver distribution and location?
I would say he is, Doug. I would say he is
Excellent.
for sure.
Bang. Ring the bell. Okay, our final matchup to discuss. Bengals Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, Greg, is leaving a lot of stuff on the table against the Raiders defense under Patrick Graham, by the way, that has gotten a ton better since Antonio Pierce. Listeners, viewers, watch the Raiders defense over the last 3 or 4 weeks. It's a different animal, but this was glaring. You start with the Adam Butler sack with 13:39 left in the first quarter. Mahomes had Rashee Rice coming open on a crosser against slot corner Nate Hobbs. He had Edwards-Helaire open on a flat route out of the wing, and he didn't make either throw. He just kind of stood there, and Butler got through on a TE stunt with Max Crosby. Then you have moments where things are just ridiculous. 12:26 left in the first half. Mahomes threw a quick out to MVS. Cornerback Jack Jones fell down, and MVS, it wasn't a great throw, but MVS was out there playing volleyball. Then with 4:55 left in the first half, they tried another quick out, this time to Justin Watson. Jones is off bail, and he jumps it for his second pick six in as many weeks. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on what's wrong with the Chiefs offense, but just I know you had some
There's a
thoughts.
lot.
Yeah, but you had some thoughts when we talked on the phone about just Mahomes in general. And it's almost as much at this point about the sideline as it is the field.
Yeah, I think there's, obviously there's a lot wrong with this offense. Um, certainly the offensive tackles Taylor and the rookie Morris are struggling in one-on-one pass protection. There's no question about that. But I think overall, you can see that Mahomes is a little tentative in turning it loose on throws that he's made many times. Even throws to Kelsey, he's just not turning it loose. Hard to know why that is the case, but there are throws he's leaving on the field that we have seen him routinely make. He's always been a little loose and undisciplined. That's not producing the same results as it has in the past. In many ways, his game's been built on second reaction off schedule plays, and they're not happening this year the way they have in previous years. I think one of the things that I was taught by quarterback coaches smarter than I am is watch a quarterback's helmet when he drops and sets. And Mahomes is not playing with a column helmet. Too much head movement is always a sign that you are not focusing correctly with, and here's another one of your favorite terms, that you are not focusing correctly with clean elimination and isolation. And he's struggling with that right now. So yes, are there other issues? There are. But he's not playing as in, you always have to, when you evaluate a quarterback, Doug, isolate the quarterback's play. And again, are there other factors? Yes, for sure there are other factors. But right now, he's not helping the solution. He's just, part of the problem.
Yeah, the aggravations are aggregating. It's bad. Jake Browning, 3 interceptions against the Steelers. Steelers did a really good job of like presenting different looks and doing, creepers and replacements. And it looks like 4 are coming and then they drop 8. And, so just Browning, your thoughts in general, how he played in the Steelers game. By the way, the Steelers had Patrick Peterson and Eric Rowe at safety, as you said. That was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that the Steelers, for the most part, because they had Rowe, they simplified their coverage concepts, given that they were playing with 2 new safeties in Peterson and Rowe. They played significant snaps of cover 3 and cover 2, basic stuff. I thought Browning was okay. I mean, he made a couple of really bad throws. One of the interceptions, it might have been Rowe's interception. The first interception, which
the second one was to Rowe.
Yeah, the second one was to Rowe. The Peterson one, I watched that many times. I don't know if he was trying to throw that ball away, and it just didn't happen because there was no receiver anywhere near to the throw. So I don't know the answer to that. Only he could tell you.
Was that the one? Was that the first one where they mucked it up by dropping 7 in cover 2, and that's not what they showed? Was that the first one or the third one?
Yeah, it was late rotation to cover 2. That was the first one.
Okay.
And then he ran out of the pocket, running to his right, and then he just threw it up, and I just wasn't sure whether he was trying to throw it away.
Yeah, and then
the Rowe interception was bad.
Yeah,
I think he read the wrong defender because his read is on that particular route concept. It was flood to the boundary, and his read is the flat defender who was Rowe. When I watched the play over and over, my sense was that he was looking at the hook defender, Jack, and he should have been looking at the flat defender, Rowe, because he threw that ball as if he had no awareness of where Rowe was. So I don't know. That's one you just don't know unless he would tell you. And then, of course, the last one was late in the game. But other than that, I thought he hung in there, and I thought he made some throws. There are times when you watch him where it looks like he has a relatively refined sense of routes and progressions. And, I don't think he's played poorly at all.
Well, I think Zach Taylor's done, we discussed before, done a nice job of, it's not simple, but I think they take a few concepts and they sort of expand them as his comfort expands. And we hear this a lot, with the Doug Peterson Eagles is where you started to hear it a lot, was you take a few things and then they just sort of blow up. And that's how most players Or, Al
I would
Saunders
agree
played
with that. I would
700
agree
games.
with that.
Well, yeah, but it's like 20 plays, and it's then 5,000 different iterations of those 20 plays.
No question. It becomes formation,
Right.
splits, all that stuff, but different personnel. But I think overall, given that he was undrafted and hadn't played in what, 3, 4 years really, I think he's shown, again, I'm not going to get caught up in whether God he could start some, that's
Yeah.
not why we're doing this right now. But I think he's shown okay, and he hung in there in that game. Obviously, they were down big, and he hung in there, and he was still being aggressive, trying to make throws.
Yeah, and the last two interceptions were kind of a front side or a back side. They kind of flipped the overall concept. So they're giving him like a few concepts that work for him. And it's like we talked about Bruce Arians and Carson Palmer and Drew Stanton. What are your best 15? So they're clearly doing that to make him comfortable. Now, Browning he could be in for some issues against Spagnuolo. We love
Without
Spagnuolo,
question.
who can throw anything at you at any time. He's another one of those Flores guys where you just don't know. And by the way, all this crap on offense is overshadowed the fact that since week 10, the Steelers or the Chiefs have jumped from 20th to 9th in defensive DVOA. While the buildings are just, falling down around him, Spags is doing what Spags does because he's awesome.
No, who would have thought this year would be saying that the Chiefs are kind of built on their defense, and
Led
because
by
that's
their
the way
defense.
it's been.
Who would have thought that about the Ravens, by the way? Who would have thought that about the Raiders, by the way?
Although I think the Ravens' offense has been, for the most part, pretty
Oh,
good.
no, it's been great, but I
Yeah.
think the defense is just, yeah. But anyway, we're splitting hairs there, and we're 45 minutes in, so we probably shouldn't do that. We should probably say, Greg, thank you as always for your wisdom and knowledge and expertise, and we'll be talking more X's and O's next week.
Thanks, Doug. This was great. Appreciate it.